Warrior of light, destroy the force of darkness. Warrior of light, destroy, destroy.
Warrior of Light. We are the Midnight Warriors. Hey, what's up, Vicki Joy? I'm not Vicki Joy. That's Vicki Joy. I'm Tom Dunn. This is Through the Black. And hey, this is a bonus episode this week. So whenever you're watching this, I hope you feel very bonused. Okay. You've been bonused.
Wow. Yep. Got me working overtime.
Yeah.
The boss, the man.
Vic, we had to pull out those big bucks that time and a half to get you on here.
Yeah, right.
Hey, but no more tax on that. So good news.
Yeah. I'm getting paid double, and zero times 2 is zero.
Yeah.
There you go.
Let's make it triple.
Woo!
I mean,
it's all good.
Whatever. Yeah. You just name your number. Folks, lots of stuff going on as usual. Hey, we've got an amazing show tonight. We got a couple friends coming on that, man, these guys are hard to get on. They are hard to nail down. And then when I got them nailed down, they're like, I didn't even know it was a show. So maybe I just inadvertently tricked them. I don't know. But
communication breakdown.
Folks, I want to tell you, freedom encounters are happening. And if you want a freedom encounter, you can send us an email at throughtheblack.connect@outlook.com. And this week we are doing them Wednesday and Thursday. Okay. Ooh. So if you have a need, a prayer need, if you have a stronghold that you want help with, something that you need help, prayed through, just, the power of the blood of Christ breaks curses, breaks strongholds, and we're here as friends to help you through that. So if that's something you need, send us an email, and what will happen is we'll get you all set up, and then you'll get a call from us, and we'll pray with you, and we'll pray for you, and all that stuff. So anyway, Freedom Encounters. Vic, also, of course, the Strange Land Conference is coming at the beginning of, let me see, sometime in the first week of March. I just want to let everybody know there's going to be a price increase. Okay. But this conference is going to be amazing. I want to announce that we have a new speaker at the conference. His name is Pastor Bill Dunphy, and he has been pardoned by the president. He was in a prison for 4 months, and thank God it was only 4 months. But man, he is glad to be out. He walked out a couple weeks ago, and this guy, he has an incredible story. He's going to be at the Strange Land Conference. Okay, we don't have his bio and stuff yet, but check this out. Go ahead and scroll down through there real quick, Katie. And right here we go. It's Jason Spears and Christopher Dean are going to be there. They're helping us out. They're talking about the satanic control matrix. And Vic, surprise, they just so happen to be our guest for tonight. Okay. Woo! So yes. We have Patrick Meechan, Vicki Joy, Tom Dunn, Kenny C is going to be there. We have Dr. Pastor Mike Spalding, Coach Dave Daubenmeier. The list goes on. You can go find the link in the show notes. Okay. But we want to bring on right now Jason and Christopher from Operation Red Pill. Am I saying it right? Guys?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sounds right.
I keep wanting calling it the Red Pill Project. It's Operation Red Pill. And yes. Guys, man, it took forever to get you guys on, but I think it's going to be worth the wait. I am so excited to introduce our audience to you guys and your podcast. and let everybody know, hey, these guys are going to be a part of the conference. So I want to start off right out of the gates. How many conferences have you done before?
Including what we're about to get into, we're at none.
None. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is going to
Fresh
be
out
the
the
first
gate.
conference. That's amazing. And you know what? Of course, I met you last summer over at Pastor Mike's conference. Go Therefore. And I knew right away, if I did, I hadn't decided yet, but if I did another conference, that I wanted to have you guys involved. And I really like what you're doing, and I think it's super cool. So
That's awesome.
yeah, no, I think this is going to be fun, guys. You guys are going to help me do some MCing at the conference as well, and you guys are speaking on, I think it's Friday night. Is that correct?
Christopher?
Well, we haven't seen a schedule yet, but yeah,
Okay.
we were going to speak. We just didn't know when exactly we
Yes.
had people speaking on each day. So
Well, yeah, I have you guys on Friday night. So, and we have like just in the last 24 hours, we've pretty much finished up that schedule. So, Katie might even have one to throw up that we can look at. But I'm kind of putting Katie on the spot tonight. I'm not letting her know about any of this stuff. But so, guys, you do the podcast Operation Red Pill. Can you let's start right there. When did that start? And looks like we got a schedule here. Yeah, there we go. Strangeland Conference. So let me just mention Thursday night is kind of like the pre-conference. So we're going to be doing a class on Crash Course in Freedom Encounters. But then there you go. Friday, registration starts at 1. Mike Spalding at 2. Mark Harrington at about 3. We got Vicki Joy about 4:15. We're going to have dinner, Patrick Meechan, and then Jason Spears and Christopher Dean, the Satanic Control Matrix. So you guys can check that out. Well, it's going to be up on the website soon if it's not already. So, anyway, registration, by the way, at throughtheblack.com. The link will be in the show notes. So that's a long way of asking a question. Tell us, how in the world did you guys start your podcast?
you want to take it, Jason, or you want me?
I mean, you're right there laughing, man. Let's go ahead and tell them how it started.
Well, it started because we worked at the same place, and I had been there a while, and he came in, and how do I tell it that he said I was going to hell, or he had called into question my salvation because I was wearing my motorcycle leathers and my cut. It said Packer Brothers on the back, and so it started this intense conversation. Theological conversation, and towards the end of it, I had actually lost the conversation. He was like, well, you could have had me, if you would just, said this here and, come at it from this angle. And I was like, man, this guy's way smarter than I gave him credit for. And
you're doing good, Christopher. Keep going. I'm enjoying this part.
So we ended up getting stationed in the same location for a while. And we'd have these just intense conversations, breaking down all types of stuff from Bible verses to movies. I was able to educate him on what the movie The Devil's Advocate is really about. If you're not paying attention, you miss it. And all this conversation and friendship really culminated. We were talking about Noah's flood. And how we can believe that, what evidence do we have that it actually happened and all of that. And this random employee comes over and inserts himself into our conversation. And he was like, you guys actually believe in that? And we were like, well, yeah. And he's like, well, how do you know that it's true? And Jason speaks up and he's like, well, how do you want it? I can answer it scientifically, scripturally, historically. Like, what are you looking for? And the guy said scientifically. So Jason rattled off some answers and stuff, and the guy walked away, and I looked at Jason. I was like, hey, we can do that? We have answers for all 3 of these? And he was like, well, I only had one prepared, so I'm glad he asked the right question.
It's very fortuitous.
So it really started this. If there are answers to these questions, we want to know what they are. And that really started us on this really investigation into, the truth of why do we believe what we believe? Do we have good reason to believe it? And we've been hardcore researching it ever since. It's been about 10 years at this point.
Guys, I love that. That's amazing. I think that's the beauty of what people like us do. We come at it with this information, and I feel like when we red pill somebody, we give them confidence to answer questions while the world is running circles around the church.
Yeah.
We have the missing pieces or the fill in the blanks, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Jason, I want to hear from you.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And I grew up in the church. And one of the things I found that I was most frustrated with is that you were on the winning team when you were at church, but as soon as you left the four walls of the church, you're back on this losing team that doesn't seem to have real answers, that can shut people up when you're talking to them out there in the real world. Right. And everybody thinks that you're a Christian because you're an idiot. Like you just aren't smart enough to understand the truth. And if you had these answers and you had the scruples necessary, one, you wouldn't be a Christian. Two, you'd have better answers to the questions that we're asking. And three, you'd be on our side. And I got a little irritated, constantly feeling like I was on the losing team. And I remember asking God, like, I'm not even sure why I should believe in you. Right. Like, explain why, because it kind of sucks when I go to tell people and they're like, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And so, like, are you the God that makes sense? Or are you the God that we should just believe in because we're supposed to believe? And as God likes to do, I did not get the answer the way that I was telling him I wanted my answer. I put my order in, but I got a different order in response. I wanted to know if there were good reasons why I should believe in him, and he should tell me yes on the spot. It was not the way he chose to answer me. He chose to answer me through this very long, protracted process that I almost forgot I had asked the question. I remember, though, running into being introduced to Ravi Zacharias, and some of his answers to just common questions were absolutely mind-blowing to me. And they were structured in such a way that they didn't violate your intelligence, they elevated it. And I was like, I've never really seen that in a Christian response to any of these questions. And I remember going from Ravi and then getting introduced to Chuck Missler, and Missler blew my mind because I didn't think that you could dig into the word and actually talk about the Bible the way that he does. Like, I remember just there was a YouTube video that came across. It was the flood, and it said it was an hour. And I was like, there's no way you could talk about the flood for an hour. Like, I've read it several times. It is at most, even if you fall asleep halfway through it, it is 2.5 minutes long. It is it. How do you talk about this for an hour? I'll bite. The man got to talking. I forgot everything I was supposed to be doing. He talked for an hour about the flood, and I forgot to do anything else but listen. By the time he got done, I was like, so this is session 6. Where are the first 5? I need to go back to the beginning, and we need to go through all of this. And I got hooked on Chuck Missler. And he was another person that elevated your thinking. And they, between Missler and Ravi, both of these guys really changed my thinking on Christianity, which was amazing. And I felt that fire coming in of, it's not just that you should believe. It's that it's the smartest thing to believe. Right? There are credible reasons that are intellectually satisfying as to why we should believe, which then led to some of the conversations that Christopher was talking about that I had with him, but also the ones I found myself in. And as we begin to develop that and go down this course of investigating these various questions and ideas related to Christianity and life as a whole, there emerged this idea that God started working, which was this notion of a trifrontal war. Like this idea that we are fighting a 3-sided war. And as he further developed it, it really became known. It developed into this idea that we call the satanic control matrix, which we define as the most diabolical system of manipulation ever devised, because it seeks to control every aspect of our lives until we are completely subjugated under the authority of the evil one. And it does this by using what we call a full spectrum dominance protocol to gain absolute control And it relies on occult sciences, occult technologies, and occult practices in order to infiltrate human affairs until every aspect of humanity is actually brought under satanic control. And it focuses on 3 key sectors, which God started pointing out to us. That's the individual, society at large, and then global control. And so there's almost like a system to this that, as God started to put it in our lap, it started to inform almost everything else that we were studying, because it started to become the framework by which things started falling into place across these 3 tiers of individual, societal, and global control. And there hasn't been a thing that we found yet that doesn't fit within one of those 3 sectors, which was absolutely crazy. Because I spent 2 years just going, there's no way this is real. Christopher spent 2 years going, you should trust the Holy Spirit. I spent an additional 2 years going, I don't. Like, this is wild. And yeah, this is pretty much what our whole ministry is built on, this core idea.
How long have you guys been doing the podcast?
About 2.5 years, close to.
So basically 8 years of study and research, and then you started doing the podcast.
Yeah, but
Right.
Christopher berated me into it.
Okay.
Like, I'm literally held hostage right now as we speak, having to do the show.
Yeah, I don't know the feeling. So Jason, you're very articulate, and I love that.
Oh, thank you.
Because I'm a word nerd and English major and all that stuff. But you know what's interesting as I'm listening to you talk is there's this dichotomy going on. We have the scriptures that say no servant is greater than their master. They thought he was an idiot. They thought he was unlearned. They thought he was a fool. And so we're pretty much warned that we're going to look foolish. But then we have what seems to be a contradiction. We have other verses where the people listened to Jesus because, unlike their scribes and their learned people, he spoke with authority. And so what we have here isn't a contradiction, like, okay, are we going to look foolish or are we going to have authority? What we have here is a class system. The learned and the educated thought he was a fool, but the common people loved him. And so it's not a given that we Christians have to always look like fools, but we live now in a culture that's highly educated. Everybody goes to school, they get their degrees. And so among our current social and cultural structure, we will look foolish, just like Jesus promised we would. But the common man, the people, like just like you guys, hey, we're going to work every day and we're just having conversations with each other. We want answers. We're trying to figure this stuff out. The common man that stumbles upon a Chuck Missler video and mind is blown, because how can you talk about that for an hour? Those kind of people, who I think does represent a majority of our country, because the people that get the cameras and the microphones, they're the ones that are going to think we're foolish. And so they get to set this precedent, but they really don't speak for the common man. And I think what's so awesome about these podcasts and these conferences and even this conversation that we're having now is the common man is able to sit around and have these discussions. And I do think that truth and biblical truth does appeal to us because eternity is written in our hearts. And when we're allowed to talk with unchecked, we're not being threatened, we're not being shut down, we're not being shadow banned. When the common people have the opportunity to just face to face sit down and talk about what's on our hearts, I think that biblical truth makes a lot of sense and answers a lot of questions.
You know, I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that Christopher left off when he was talking about how we got started, we used to sit after work in the parking lot and talk for about 2 to 3 hours every night.
Wow.
It got so bad they thought we were dating. Right? Like, that was like the joke around work. Are those guys still in the parking lot? And we'd be like, yeah. And we would talk about everything. And we'd always be getting ready to go. Right? Like, first 5 minutes, Christopher, I got to go, man. But hey, have you heard about this thing about the Nephilim? 2 hours later, we've got we're having our full blown conversation. And then somebody else would come up and they'd be like, dude, that was amazing. I'm like, I didn't know you were standing there. How long you been there? I'm like, yeah, we were talking about Nephilim. I've never heard that. What are you going to talk about tomorrow? I was like, I don't know. Box cutters. We don't know what's on the document. You know, we'll talk, but you never know what we're going to talk about. We would end up doing this night after night. And it ended up that one of our managers at the time came up to us and he was like, man, you know, I moved from out of town. I'm here doing manager work. And one of the things I wish is that I could just get a bunch of guys together around the campfire or whatever and just have a conversation. And I'm not an outdoor dude. And I wasn't a managerial dude either. He wasn't my favorite manager at the time.
Mine
and so
either.
I was like, shut up, because you betrayed me. I was like, there's no way that I really want to do this. And before I can say no, Christopher was already like, oh, absolutely, man. Let's do it. And I was like, what? What are you doing? Like a measure of Christian profanity that erupted from my mouth, right? I mean, I was trying to pull the words back, Vicki. You gotta understand. I was trying to be holy and set an example. But the demons in Christopher bought out the demons in me. And I'm like, what are you doing? This is my least favorite manager. You want to go to his home? I'm like the Jewish people. We don't fellowship with tax collectors, managers, or anybody of that ilk. What are you doing? Like in 2 weeks, I find myself over at the guy's house. And I'm like, what in the world is going on?
Wow.
Cut to the chase. This dude not only reconnects, the manager, not only reconnects his relationship with God, but then becomes one of our best friends, one of the deepest supporters of the show. Whole family's involved, invites us out like once a year. We go spend time with him and the family. Like the whole thing turned around. And I would say I have Christopher to thank. I don't. It was an act of God. I thank the Lord. I'm still upset with Christopher. Right. But this whole thing laid the foundation, because after we went over to his house, it ended up opening up into a Bible study. And then the Bible study became a neighborhood Bible study. I think at one point we had like 20 people, work and neighborhood, coming over for a Bible study. And I'm looking at Christopher like, I'm not that dude. I'm not Bible study guy. I'm not fisher of men guy. I'm the dude in the background. Like, let's make sure we got all the stuff set properly. I'm that guy. You got me out here doing stuff I don't like doing. Christopher's like, isn't this great? Isn't it fun to live the Christian life? And I'm like, no, not at your speed. This is not fun at all.
But it's funny that God has even put us together, because we often joke that like I'm the gas and he's the brakes. So whatever it is, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And he's like, no, we got to slow down. You know, we got to polish this up. We got to spell the words correctly. And I'm like, no, let's just go for it. So between the two of us, I think we get to where the Holy Spirit wants to take us.
Christopher's the roller coaster. Yeah, Christopher's the roller coaster. I'm the dude in the picture screaming.
I love that, you guys. You know what? If I had to sit down on paper and like write out a little job description for my best friend, you know, introvert, hates the phone, wants to go out once a year, like that, you know, that's me. Right. And right now, one of my besties that a lot of people know because we do a podcast together, but she's a former LAPD ex-military drill sergeant.
Oh, I like her.
Yeah, and she's like, go, 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 go. You know, and so like I have all these like ideas and I just want to have a little pen name and just put it out, you know, anonymously. And, you know, God sends me this drill sergeant, and, you know, nowhere on paper should the two of us even be friends. And I just love when he does that.
That would be our friendship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love it when she brings up other hosts. Anyway.
Oh, you ought to talk, Mr. Let's do a podcast.
I can't help you. You live hundreds of miles away. Guys, there's so much I want to ask you, but I have it in my notes here. Just real quick, did you guys see this Wes Huff on Joe Rogan? And if you did, can you comment on it? Because it's similar.
I think Christopher saw that because he was talking to me about it. I haven't seen it.
I did. I tried to watch the original interview with Billy Carson and Wes Huff, and then I watched the Joe Rogan one. And I really like a lot of the stuff that Wes Huff has to say. We had originally done one of our first episodes, maybe in the first 15 or 20, we did a Why We Believe the Bible, and we based it off of Bodhi Bacham. He has a teaching on it. You know, and he goes through this whole thing, you know, that we have a reliable source of historical documents that are written by eyewitnesses in the lifetime of other eyewitnesses, and they document actual events that took place in fulfillment of specific prophecy, and these authors say that their writings are divine and not human in origin. And we're like, oh, that sounds really good, you know, let's use that. And we started going into it. But some of the stuff that Wes Huff was talking about, in the different metrics used to validate historical documents, and how the Bible just comes through on every single one of them. The names that are used, how many books there are, the fact that there's a 1,000-year time span between like the oldest version of Ezekiel that we have and one found in the medieval times, and they are word for word a perfect match. I was really intrigued by the stuff that he was saying, and I thought it was cool that it was happening on Joe Rogan.
Well, the reason I bring it up, because he had a similar story to you guys. He was like, okay, I want to be able to defend this and have confidence in it and know. So it drove him to do the archaeological research and go back to Egypt and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool. And that interview with Joe Rogan, just the fact that Joe Rogan had him on there, I thought was amazing. He, you know, all the people that would be reached, even though I think Joe was probably just trying to prove that he could get punched in the face with truth, you know, and take it, so to speak.
Yeah,
But,
I thought it was really interesting. I appreciated that Wes Huff asked a direct question to Joe Rogan, because after he breaks down who Jesus is and all of the reasons that we have to believe that what the Bible tells us actually happened, and Wes Huff was like, so Joe, what do you think about Jesus? And very quickly, Joe Rogan shifted into, well, Jesus seemed to be this type of person, and that's important for a lot of people. He never actually answered, and I don't know if it's part of his contract or if he was just weaseling his way around. He wasn't even able to answer a direct question about Jesus, and I thought that was pretty telling.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that confront him about Jesus, and he squirms his way out of it. He's not comfortable with that at all. So, guys, man, so cool having you on, and I'm so glad that we're going to have you at the conference. This is going to be a blast, Vic. But so,
it is. Absolutely.
So I was on your show. It's been months ago now, but and if anybody wants to look that up, I think we've shared it before. It's in their archives. Maybe Katie can put a link up. But anyway, you guys just blew me away with what you already knew. Usually people ask me on because they want, you know, what I know. And you guys were already very aware of satanic ritual abuse and just all of those types of things that were going on behind the scenes. Now, you started off kind of talking about just like some historical biblical things. When did you guys get into like some of the darker stuff, like satanic ritual abuse, or, you know, some of these other things? What was that like?
I don't think it was too far in to the studies where that started to show up. I think our first introduction to it was listening. We were doing research, I want to say, on abortion, which took us into, we came across this guy, Dan Duvall, and he did a whole talk on abortion that quite honestly pissed me off, because we had done a lot of work, and then I listened to his, and it was like I wanted to erase everything we did, pull it down, and start from scratch all over again, because he laid so much information out. It was like, oh my God. So I ended up jumping into a bit of his content, and it wasn't too far into that content that he ended up doing a talk, a 2-part series with a young lady who had went through satanic ritual abuse, and she recounts the stories in her own words, and she doesn't pull any punches. And I remember almost shaking a bit listening to it. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy if this is real. And I think it is. And it wasn't too far after that, that since we had the structure with the satanic control matrix, that it started to plug in and make more sense as to why these things were happening and how the government played into all of that and what it was being pushed towards with setting up, utilizing that for energy's sake, as well as getting the military industrial complex involved, the breach that creates, but then also utilizing these people for ritualistic abuse and being able to combine that with a breeding program and some of the other things that they're doing. Like, it opened up a whole smorgasbord to us. as far as research. And we're like, man, this makes more sense. And then shortly after listening to that talk that she did, I think Laura Sanger did a talk, and she ended up going into some more details about the breeding programs and things like that. So the Holy Spirit was really dropping different things in our lap to really push this whole thing. And one of the things that we decided we wouldn't do is shy away from the uncomfortable conversations and topics.
Good.
Because we've
Good.
gone through that, you know, at churches, and it's like, yeah, I don't want sanitized Christianity. Like, make this stuff make sense. And if we have an enemy that hates humanity, then I want to know some of the things that he's doing. Right? It can't just be, okay, don't lie so much and don't be so selfish and make sure that you don't lust. Like, those are good, and those are things we shouldn't do. But the Christian walk has got to be more than that. And I think it was Mike Heiser, when he did the talk that I came across, The Unseen Realm, that whole book, and the Deuteronomy worldview that he lays out. Like, all of his stuff was getting dropped in our lap at the same time almost. And it began just to make more sense that there has to be more that Jesus came to do than just give us moral perfection. And so when Heiser actually set out the things that Jesus was responsible for setting straight, that it was the sin of the angels as well as mankind, that he came to straighten out all of that, it was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. And then we consider the fact that on Mount Hermon, you get the fallen angels actually setting up systems of evil that are perpetuated throughout culture, that they are literally inculcated into the fabric of society so that evil is perpetuated. Like, well, that makes more sense. Oh, well, that explains why everything got wet. I thought the flood was just because of, people's evil. But then if it was just for people's evil, you wouldn't have needed Jesus Christ's sacrifice. So maybe it was for something else. Well, then you got the Nephilim that are here, but how did they show up? Oh, I didn't know that angels could actually have sex with people. I know some women are hot that I would think they're angels, but this is a totally different perspective on this. Right? And so all of this stuff starts getting systematically set up where we're looking at this, and the things that start making sense push us into the deeper areas that people don't want to talk about, including satanic ritual abuse. And that's one of the reasons, Tom, that we got so excited when you were talking about it at the conference. We were like, man, there's more source material that we can go look up. This is great. I can't wait to dive into some of that stuff. Like, the worse, the better. And in the sense of, at least it shows us the battle is real. And it shows us that our enemy is not playing around, and that it's not just about Sunday school type of issues, that there are much deeper, much more sinister things that are going on that are truly designed to place humanity at a very specific locale on the cosmic chessboard. We wanted to know about that.
Amen. Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things that really frustrates me, for I guess lack of a better word, is as Christians, we are responsible for certain pieces of information that have been obscured and hidden, because even if you don't want all the details, we hold the keys of prayer and fasting and cultural shifting through our prayers and through righteousness and through covenant keeping. And one of the things that has really frustrated me is there is a huge difference between, I don't want the details of satanic ritual abuse. Like, I can't stomach the stories where these people tell me about every single thing they went through. I can't handle the details. There's a difference between I can't handle the details and I wasn't called into that, to I don't believe it happened at all. And I understand cognitive dissonance, and I understand where people don't want to live in a world where they realize it's so much more evil than we've ever been told. But how do we close that gap with Christians? We hold the power to pray and fast and call forth the Holy Spirit that can be poured out and affect change. How do we close that gap between, I believe it's real, I can't handle the details, but I believe it's real, and I'm going to moving forward, I'm not going to listen to survivor stories and things like that, but I'm also not going to be over here saying satanic panic and saying it's not real and it's not true, and having sympathy for the devil, so to speak, because we're just closing our ears to it. How do we close our ears maybe to the details that are shocking and abhorring without closing our ears to the actual calling that we have as believers to be affecting change in this area?
I think that's an absolutely fabulous question. I think one of the things that has motivated Christopher and I is the scripture of don't be ignorant of the enemy's devices, his tactics. Now, to what degree you need to be aware of so that you're not ignorant, I think that differs from person to person, but at least as a starting point, it's making sure that you're not ignorant. It's also the thing that Christ said of let no man deceive you. Right. These are direct commands as to things we're supposed to do, which sounds to me as though there has to be an active position that's taken, and it can't be passive. Right. So if you're on that course to familiarize yourself with the tactics of the enemy, as the Bible puts forth, and you're not resting on just what people tell you because you don't want to let yourself be deceived, then you at least have to be taking that active approach with the help of the Holy Spirit, because you're not called to do this on your own. So if the Holy Spirit is taking you on a course, it's probably going to seem like I was describing with that roller coaster in Christopher, right? You're on the ride, and it's probably going to go places you don't necessarily want to go. All right. That you have to come to terms with yourself of, are you comfortable with that? Because I don't think the discriminating factor should be so much, I don't want to go into this area because I don't like it or I'm not comfortable. I think the real discriminating factor has to be, Holy Spirit, where do you want to direct me? And even if you're going to take me to an area that I would prefer not to know a lot about, will you gift me with the resources necessary to navigate that, get what I need, and then go on? Because the other part of a lot of this process that Christopher and I have picked up is the fact that while we get a lot of information, which is one of the things people talk about your show, like it is information heavy. You guys come with a lot of information. That's all great. But one of the frustrating things that we have found out is that a lot of that information is not for us. We like to think it was because we enjoy the process. You know, we enjoy learning and we enjoy discovery and all of that. But most of what we learn is for someone else. And if that's the case, if that's how the Holy Spirit works, is getting you things so that you can help others, then even in that process of going into areas that you don't prefer to go, you have to also recognize it might not be just about you. There might be information that you need to get for someone you're about to meet, for someone that's about to ask you a question, for someone you didn't know existed that's going to run up to you at a truck stop at like 4 a.m. and be like, hey, got a question. Have you ever heard of something called SRA? And you're like, what? Who would ask? You don't ask this at 4:30 in the morning. This is clearly like a 9 a.m. question, not a 4:30 in the morning question. Why are you asking me? Man, I think I've got somebody in my family that may have been involved in this. You're like, you don't know where those moments are going to happen. And the Holy Spirit likes to prepare. So if you're not on board with the process, and if you're resisting, if you're like me and you're kicking and screaming a little bit, you might miss those opportunities to get those gems that will actually help somebody else. And you don't really feel the weight of that until somebody tells you later, what you said really meant a lot because this is what I was dealing with. You're like, oh my God. Had I known I was about to talk to you, I would have paid more attention. I would have got a little more information. I don't personally like this subject, but obviously you needed it. And who else was going to get it for you? This is how the Lord tends to work. So it's a more nuanced and complex answer, which I mean, I hope I answered your question.
Oh, you more than answered it. I love what you just said, because it's something that in my line of work, I'm trying to explain that to people too. Like, look, I know that some of this sleep paralysis and paranormal activity stuff might seem like a niche. Like, why would you need to research this stuff? It's just gratuitous. There's no reason. But even I try to explain to people, even if you've never experienced this, and I hope you never do, we're in this arena now of disclosure where people are sharing with total strangers, and they're going online and they're sharing some of the deepest, most inmost things that in the past people wouldn't have ever shared. Yeah. And you never know when that person's going to come up to you and say, like, I had this nightmare last night. And I so resonate with what you just said, Jason, because before I had heard of SRA, I'd say about a year before I'd heard of it, I'd never heard of Russ. I hadn't met Tom yet. I was living in Pennsylvania, and I had 3 people come up to me in churches, terrified, telling me stories that a year later I realized they were SRA survivors. But a year prior, I did not have the knowledge. I did not have the information.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's a heavy price tag, because when you learn this stuff, it's a loss of innocence, so to speak. It's a loss of your own personal sense of control and safety. It's a new level of faith when you realize that this world is so much more evil than we ever thought. And you have to give up certain comforting amounts of ignorance when you realize this stuff
Yeah.
exists. But there's 3 people that slipped through my fingers that I could have told them about Through the Black. I could have told them about Rust, but I'd never heard of it. And so I love the way you answered that. That's just going to put a whole new spin even on just the way that I try to motivate people to look. We have to expose the deeds of the devil. It's part of our calling. It's part of the command. And that doesn't mean we sit around all titillated telling each other campfire stories about all
Right.
the erotic, disgusting, gross, murderous things that the elites are doing. But it does mean that we do sometimes responsibly, like we're doing now, expose these things. Because if the whole church has their head in the sand and doesn't even know these things are happening, how are we going to expose or help the people that are victims of it? And that's another thing that I wish the church could kind of differentiate a little bit better. Gratuitously and vicariously getting enjoyment out of talking about other people's sin is not the same thing as exposing it.
It's the
Right.
point of
Very
no
true.
return. In my opinion, I remember the weekend when I started putting everything together. I freaked out a little bit. I thought I was going crazy. I was like, because I kept getting confirmation across from different sources that didn't know each other, that were telling the same stories. And I remember my mom came over for a visit, and I pulled her into my office and shut the door, and I whispered. I was like, I got something to tell you, and I don't want to say it out loud, and I was afraid. And I had this point where I was very fearful, for a couple weeks until I decided, okay, there's no turning back now. So all of this is just relevant, and yeah, I can definitely relate. So folks, if you're just tuning in, yeah, we are hanging out with Jason Spears and Christopher Dean from Operation Red Pill. These guys are going to be at the Strange Land Conference. Hey, be there or be square. Don't forget, Strange Land Conference. You can get the tickets at throughtheblack.com. I need to plug. I don't usually plug this much, but I want people to know, be there, because this is exciting. And these guys are speaking on Friday night. So yeah, it's going to be good stuff. Katie, can you bring up? I want to get the everybody's response to this. Here is a podcast, and I don't know.
Hang on, Tom.
Yeah,
Real
go
quick.
ahead.
Before we go on, I would just like to touch on Vicky's question on, how
Yeah.
do we deal with this darkness?
Mhm.
I don't know if you've heard of the book. It's Live Not by Lies by a guy
Yeah.
named Rod Dreher. And he makes the statement that Christianity in the West has really ceased to be Christianity, and it's really become, what does he say? Therapeutic moral deism, right?
Yeah.
That we just want to believe that there's a God that is doing good things for us, so we feel good, And it's so much so that there's a lot of people that are like, oh, if I'm doing this and it's difficult, and it's challenging for me, it must not be what God has called me to do, because it's hard and I don't like the way that it feels. And I think, unfortunately, that is bled into even some of the most well-intentioned believers, because I'm not sure, after reading the Bible, that we have the luxury to want to feel good about the condition of the world.
So true.
That's a heck of a point.
Yeah.
Reach.
I mean, if it's really bad out there and we are the ones that have the answers and have the light, then it doesn't matter how upset we might get or how disgusted that we might be by it. Like, we have a mandate to go to the world, that he has come to seek and save the lost. And that's not just someone that got lost going to Walmart. That's everyone that's lost. Years of satanic ritual abuse where their parents were abusing them. Like, this stuff is real, and Jesus can help that too. And I don't think that we get to enjoy the pleasures of ignorance when it comes to these things.
I love that. You know, at what point is our pursuit of comfort the same thing as idolatry? At what point do those two bleed into each other?
Right.
Well, I think that the metaphor of a red pill fits so well. And of course, we know this from the Matrix movies. I always used to say that the Bible is the ultimate red pill. And when you know, the choice given to Neo in the movies is like, hey, you can take the blue pill and go back to sleep, or you can take the red pill, okay, and then we'll show you how far the rabbit hole goes. So, very, very relevant. Everything is coming full circle. So, super cool, super cool. Hey, I want to real quick. We want to plug again before the end of the show, but how do people find your podcast?
Christopher?
There we go.
Oh,
orppodcast.com.
yeah. You can find us at orppodcast.com. That's our home site. We tried to keep it simple. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at ORP Podcast. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/ORP Podcast. We do an episode every Wednesday. So far, thank Jesus for making it possible. We have done 152 straight weeks. We haven't missed yet. We've come pretty close here recently, but
Yeah, okay. And here is the website. So, guys, you've got to go over and check out this website. So, check out this podcast. So, yeah, I want to get your guys' response to this. I think this is interesting. Christianity today, of course, is probably a very well respected magazine among your Sunday go to meet Christians, right? I mean, I've definitely read, tons of articles and seen, this magazine around for years, but now we have a podcast being put out by the magazine called The Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, and it's basically debunking satanic ritual abuse. So, and yeah, you got not promoting this podcast by any means, but hey, if anybody wants to listen to it, go for it. I don't know if I can, if I'm would be able to listen to it, but and it's not fair for me really to be critical of it when I haven't listened to it, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So, because I've seen this, we've seen this for years. This is the plot line in so many TV shows. I mean, how many movies have come out in the last 5 years trying to debunk satanic ritual abuse? What is the motive when this has been something, when this satanic panic happened in the late 80s, early 90s? Why are they going back and trying to debunk something that they came up with a very clever, catchphrase to debunk it? I mean, again, I don't think anybody here has heard this podcast, but any thoughts on this, guys?
it just seems to fit the narrative. Like with Satan being as evil as he is, he needs a lot of PR people, right, to spin the story and make him look like the bad guy and the victim. And that's not necessarily easy to do when you're in his shoes.
Right.
But it seems crazy to me that they're trying to debunk satanic ritual abuse. Because one of the first things that we uncovered, you had asked a little bit earlier, like how we got into some of this. I think it was episode 26. So fairly early on in our podcast, we were doing a show segment we call Snakeheads, and it was leaders of the new occult order or something like that, architects of the new occult order. So we did like Helena Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, and then we came across Anton LaVey. And the thing that I thought was incredible about all of that is the whole time that they're, spewing out this idea of satanic panic, and all of these super conservative Christians are concerned about this stuff that's going on. Like there's over 3,000 documented cases with police officers, right? That this stuff is going on. Michael Aquino at the same time, he ended up actually getting processed out of the military for the allegations that happened at Presidio. And I'm like, so it wasn't like the panic was justified. Like all of this stuff was happening when people were afraid that it was happening. But they, everyone put the spotlight on Anton LaVey because he's got a black robe and, all the makeup on and everything. But it's all to obfuscate the truth, because the satanic ritual abuse happens more by people in suits at the Pentagon than it does people in robes.
It's like Sunday school teachers. Tom, they should have called that podcast Devil. Bothers me. It doesn't bother me that people that are involved in this are trying to cover the fact that non-Christians or ignorant people. What blows my mind and is that we have people who are claiming to be born again Christian, talks about the devil, flat out says that we have an enemy that wants to prowl around and slightest bit of evidence that he is real and really is, perpetrating exactly what the scriptures that you say you believe in is happening. Not only are you not believing it, but you're putting out propaganda to actually shut it down and silence a church that could be praying and fasting if they had the knowledge. Like it really disgusts me that the church is now leading the new satanic panic 2.0.
Yeah. Well, and for anybody who doesn't know, by the way, Christianity Today is basically a publication that's been bought and paid for. They were trying to convince people to take the vaccine. And I even have an old copy from over 10 years ago where the cover story was Christians should be the first to take a vaccine. And I mean, I read through this article and I'm just like, I'm not that guy, but I know enough from just studying this on the surface to easily debunk that article. So, and this is not confirmed, but some people were saying when I was talking about it on Facebook that they think it's been revealed that the U.S. aid, this whole thing that is being exposed right now, they're doing an audit of, was giving money to them. And I wouldn't be surprised, but they had to have a lot of Christian people on board to get people to sign up for this vaccine. So, guys, there's so many things I want to ask you about. When you told me about the satanic control matrix, that's just like stuck in my head, and I keep going back to it, and I keep thinking about it, and I'm so fascinated by what you said today, but just the idea of it. Okay, and I've recently been watching these, and I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but I've recently been watching these episodes of Candace Owens talking about Brigitte Marcon in the UK, and I'm blown away by what she's found out. I don't know if if the wife of the president of France is a man or not, but there is a lot of cover up for I don't know what. Okay. And it reminds me of what Satanists do or what people do to cover up ritual abuse. It reminds me of what happened in Hampstead and all the cover up that took place there. So are you guys familiar with this story at all?
Not really, no.
Okay. Well, we don't have to get into it, but it's something that I've been watching 3 episodes on. And I'm just like, I'm a little skeptical, but as she's going through, Candace Owens is just systematically showing piece of evidence, one after another, and the whole thing looks fishy. But the reason I bring that up is because this is an example of the satanic control matrix. And she makes the case we have a right to know who our leaders are. If this woman is is really a man or not, I don't know. I mean, you could do whatever you want. We live in a free world, but it's the idea of the whole deception that's taking place, right? So there's definitely a cover up going on. I want to let you guys talk about a little bit more about the satanic control matrix.
Christopher, what do you have over there about that, man?
One of the first sector that we like to get into, or sector one of the satanic control matrix, is demonically influenced education. And with this, a lot of times we'll go all the way back to, the very early founding of the United States, and how literacy rates were really high, even with a majority, or not a majority, but half of the population being slaves of some type. There is still really high literacy rates. And I believe it was one of the DuPonts from the DuPont Illuminati family. He was actually called over to do a study on education in the US. And he said that the reason that so many people were literate is because they would read the Bible and they would have conversations, theological conversations, at the dinner table. But they wanted to institute a compulsory education system. And the system that they modeled it after was the Prussian system. And the Prussians had to adopt a new system because they entered into a war and they got their butts handed to them. They got chased all the way back to their home ground, and it was a disgrace. So they overhauled their whole system, and they created more of a socialist system to brainwash their pupils and make soldiers that would be willingly walk into musket fire, right, for the state, patriotism, like all of these things. And this is directly the structure of the system that we have in the United States now, is the Prussian education system.
I read a book a few years ago called The Culture War in America by Bob Rosio. And he talked about a lot of things that happened in the last 100 years to get us exactly where we're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the players, they were very methodical and patient, and, basically knowing this is going to pay off. And I mean, we're seeing it now with everything that's happened in the last 5 years. I mean, it's almost like they just poured nitro into the gas tank, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, what, I want you guys to, I want to ask you just about some of your episodes here in a moment, but any more about that?
Well, that's just the first
you're talking about at the conference.
Yeah, what Christopher just covered is just the first sector of 3. That just deals with how you control an individual. And each one of these sectors, the individual level, the societal level, and the global level, they each have a commensurate mechanism that the satanic hierarchy is elected to put in place in order to achieve control at that level. So on the individual level, they've elected to utilize a compromised educational system because it's pretty much like boot camp. We all go through it. And it's designed to begin to trap the mind through the front door of formal education, but it pairs really well with the second tier, which is societal control. And that likes to use the back door of the imagination in order to inculcate satanic mind control over the masses. And so the satanic mind control piece is really interesting because essentially, you're looking at brainwashing, and there's so many different ways to do it. I mean, critical faculty bypass, hypnosis, you got predictive programming, cognitive conditioning, shock treatments, emotional manipulation. And like that doesn't even take into account frequency manipulation or projection, biohacking, color theory, subliminal messaging, acoustic bombardment, and then, of course, good old-fashioned witchcraft. All of this stuff is going on in society in order to inculcate a satanic mind into the masses using what we call the net industrial complex.
And the church doesn't have a clue. Sorry.
No, not at all. But it's subjected to it, which is crazy. It doesn't have a clue as to what's happening, but it is getting accosted by these efforts, and in large amounts, I think the enemy is winning due to the ignorance of the church. But this net industrial complex, which operates on the second tier of control that's aimed at controlling society, is really interesting because it consists of news, entertainment, and specific technologies. And we find that our news is used to control the way that we think and what we focus on. Our entertainment is used to actually take complete control of our mind, whether we're looking at books, movies, video games, sports, whatever it is. This is all being utilized in order to push satanic doctrine into our minds without the Without the frontal part of the mind being engaged with our prefrontal cortex, which actually would be the safeguard of the mind. So we're getting a lot of satanic ideas that are being pushed into the subconscious. And one of the things that Christopher and I uncovered in our research that other people, it's built on research other people have done, but it's the fact that the subconscious part of the mind is the much bigger part of our mental apparatus, and that it's able, the craziest thing is that it's able to learn. You can teach your mind so many things, even things that you're not aware that you're learning, which is what's really dangerous and really crazy, because that part of the mind doesn't turn off. So whether you're dealing with mirror neurons that are activated while you're watching something so that your mind and your body thinks that you are doing the thing that you're watching, which is crazy, or you're dealing with subliminal programming, you're dealing with messaging going in through your ear gate, which bypasses your prefrontal cortex. If you're dealing with any of those type of things that are continually happening, what we call critical faculty bypass, all of that stuff tends to program your subconscious, of which then you act and form decisions from. Right. So it's completely crazy. Vicki, you were covering some of this in your book, and we were like, oh, snap. We got another source where she's got it. This is great.
We actually, Tom and I just touched on that in our last episode on Wednesday night too. Remember, Tom, that little TikTok or whatever we watched, where it was saying that, these movies and things that we're watching, dreams even, they impact our non-conscious mind, which is just a arbitrary warehouse. There's no morality or even real memory attached to it. And then we're decision making and formulating a worldview out of that warehouse that is full of all this garbage.
Right. Like it's crazy. And that's just we just dealt with news and entertainment, which is only 2 parts of that 3-part net that's being and used to trap the mind. The other part is specific technologies. And these technological advancements are designed to assist humanity in its next significant evolutionary step, if you will, with the emergence of transhumanism. So we've got like augmented reality that relies on meshing of man and machine to the point that it's hard to tell where one stops and the other begins. You got microchips that provide brain-computer interfacing, nanotech that you can join you at a cellular level, chimera DNA, and let's not forget cognitive conditioning to be comfortable with all of that and ultimately accept artificial intelligence. And when it gets to that, look, we're talking Alexa, Siri, Google, Apple Intelligence, which recently came on, isn't very intelligent right now, but they're trying to make it better. You've got Meta AI, and all of this is being done while we quietly produce quantum-based artificial intelligence, which is so vastly superior to human intelligence that it makes Skynet look like a fairy tale. Like, that's all satanic mind control, and that's just the second tier of this satanic control matrix. That's designed to get society going from neighborhoods to nations, all under control. Once you do that, you have to take all of those different societies that you've got under control and funnel them into a global control apparatus, which the elites are calling the New World Order, or the new phrase is global governance. And this is where things really explode, because there's so many different things that are being bought online in order to achieve that and achieve these various agendas, whether we're talking about eugenics or we're talking about bringing about the single commerce system or a single religious system, which is being put in place with the whole coexist movement, whether we're talking about taking over the food supply or we're talking about synthetic biology that is going on with the hybrid breeding programs. All of this type of stuff is being culminated in order to create the proper environment and the throne necessary for the Antichrist, the replacement Christ, to rule from. Like, this is what all of this is pushing towards, so that humanity being compromised, giving up their God-given position of being imagers of God, and then accepting the satanic false image that's provided through transhumanism, would now be suitable soldiers to be enacted into the enemy's army in order to turn around and wage war against God.
So, Jason, this whole system is continuing to develop and get stronger as we're kind of distracted by a political administration that we're kind of like happy that's there, a lot of us, right?
Exactly. And Christopher and I look at that, we're going, look, some of the calls that they're making with these hundreds of executive orders that have been signed, some are good. Some seem to work. But Christopher and I are also looking at going, I don't believe the hype,
Mhm.
right? And here's the reason. It's not about a political party. The way we look at it, and Christopher, you can jump in and tell me if I'm wrong here. But the way we look at it is that the political party right now, whether you're on one side with the left or you're on the other side with the right, essentially it is two wings of the same bird. And the reason this is so is because if you're dealing with the satanic control matrix that seeks to control every aspect of humanity, then there's not a part that you leave open. You want control over both sides, right? You need to control the narrative. And so this is, again, like a military approach. If you're controlling the narrative, then what is the aim? And is it possible that you could have a Christian side to this? Could you have a political party that is really Christian? That's a fair question. The way Christopher and I look at it, I don't see how. And the reason I don't see how is because it's a political party that's derived from a political system that is within a nation that went on record saying that it is not, quote, a Christian nation, and it is dedicated to all pagan gods. This is right in our Library of Congress. Then we have a capital city that we build, that we inculcate evil designs and mechanisms into it. And we even invert a pentagram and we put it into the street layout of Washington, D.C. And we put at the very focal point of that pentagram a building. Like, what building would you put there? I don't know, maybe the White House. Why would you put the White House right at the very focal point of an inverted pentagram and then tell people that the purpose of that pentagram is to direct the seething powers of Lucifer's into that focal point where the White House sits? That doesn't even account for the fact that every time in recent history that we've had a president, they've had to go through an occult ritual right there on the halls of the Capitol building, where they literally come out of the architectural representation of the ever-present pregnant belly of ISIS in order to go through what is called an inauguration, which is an occult ritual where you present an inaugurate before the gods for consideration approval. What gods? Oh, I know. The very ones that you said the country was dedicated to, all pagan gods. Well, that's mighty funny to me. If every president has to go through that, whether they're on the political left or the political right, if they've all been awashed in this political pagan ritual, is it possible that the things that they do, whether on the left or the right, is really Christian? I don't see how. I honestly don't see how.
Yeah, I don't know what you're waiting on. If you have not gotten a ticket to see Strangeland or to be at Strangeland yet, seriously. I told you I was going to be promoting. And yeah, throughtheblack.com. Jason and Christopher are going to be there. Operation Red Pill. Guys, tell us about the podcast and some of the guests and some of your shows recently.
Well, our number one show was our Gary Wayne episode. We got Gary Wayne on the show, and it was so funny because we had been talking with him for a little bit. We had done a couple episodes on the 7 sacred sciences, and we wanted his feedback on some stuff we were covering there, and we just loved his content so much. When we finally thought that we were big enough to have Gary Wayne on, he comes on, and man, it was just a blast. The conversation that we had, it was right after his Genesis 6 Conspiracy Part 2 had come out, and so we hadn't had a chance to read that yet. But the stuff that we were getting into, and yeah, it is now our number one episode, and it was just fun for us to sit with Gary and have this conversation for like 3 hours, because he just doesn't stop. Every question he has got so much information on, and we were just eating it up. It was amazing.
Guys, back when we started Through the Black years ago, we had Gary Wayne on, and I didn't read the book, but my co-host Jared did. But his internet went out, and I was stuck there with Gary Wayne, and I didn't know what to ask him. I was able to fake my way through a couple of questions, and I came out looking all right. Like, he even said, "That's a good question," one time, and I was like, "It is." I was like, I didn't even know.
He's a really nice guy. He's from Canada.
Is, man.
Christopher, you're not gonna say it like Tom didn't ask a good question. Like Gary video. Like, oh, that's a good question. I'll answer.
I didn't read the book, man, and I was I was way out of my league, but dude, and you know what? I've seen him at conferences before, and he just intimidates me sitting behind his table. So, Gary
Yeah.
Wayne is the man.
Oh,
He was
man.
fun
Gary,
to talk to. He was
Gary
really
is
fun.
awesome. Gary's awesome. Well, Tom, I can honestly say after sitting here for an hour talking to James and Christopher, I'm this close to giving up my speaking spot at Strangeland so they can have double time because this has been awesome.
That's wild.
Guys, no, we appreciate you coming on. And this has been a long time coming. Been trying to make this happen. It's hard to get our schedules to work out, and we're even on an off night, but hey, it's worth it, man.
We really
This is
appreciate
going to air
that.
Monday or Tuesday. So hello, we're from the past, or we're in the future right now. But hey, again, how does everybody find your podcast, and anything you want to plug? You got the floor.
You can find us at orppodcast.com. You can Spotify, Apple Podcast, ORP Podcast. Super simple. Right now, we're in the middle of doing a breakdown. It's a 4-part series of Sheila Zielinski's book, The Green Gospel, where she just completely tears apart the ideas of climate change and all of the lies and the underlying religious ideas that are behind it. So we're doing one of those episodes every month for the first quarter of 2025. It's been pretty interesting.
Wow.
And then over on our Patreon, we've got several different collections from over the years that we've put together for different show segments. So one of the most popular ones that we did was one from last year called Bloodlines of the Illuminati, where we go through following Fritz Springmeier's book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, and take a look at the 13 top Illuminati bloodlines and their influence and position within society and some of the things that they've set up and initiated. We also do a series called the Committee of 300, where we look at the reigning hierarchy of the Illuminati structure and that specific committee, which is responsible for about 6,000 interlocking governance, corporations, think tanks, and persons that actually make up the power structure of the modern day Illuminati. We've got another show segment we do called therein, which is really cool because we look at common memes that are out there that are anti-biblical and anti-Christian specifically. And we look at ways that you dismantle that, which helps people, in our opinion, when you're getting hit from broadside with these ideas that make you think that maybe Christianity is not a viable belief system. We like to show where these memes fall apart. We also got a show series we do called Toxic Foods, where we get into what foods are out there that are being used by the satanic hierarchy to not only poison our bodies, but to then affect our minds and our relationship with God, and how that food plays that barrier. We've also got a really popular series that we do called Satanic Holidays, which looks at, a lot of people don't like this one, but looks at a lot of the mainstream holidays and their roots, what they really were set up in and how they were initiated, and what they do even with rituals and some of the traditions, how that carries over into modern times. We've got a show that we do with Christian Conspiracy Coalition, which is really cool, where we all get together on a panel and talk about modern things that are going on. But then another one of our really popular show segments is called Snakeheads, where we look at some of the movers and shakers within the satanic hierarchy that have been used to really inculcate the satanic mind into the public conscience, what some of those works were, who those people are. Some are dead, some are alive, but anybody that's really been pretty strategic in setting up the satanic mind within culture, we take a look at that. Another one of our show segments, we haven't done a lot with this one recently, but it was one of our fun ones, where Film Over Your Eyes, where we look at the programming that comes through entertainment and how it affects the way that we think, the way that we look, and the way that we accept satanic doctrine into our thinking without even realizing it. So we've got a few things over there.
So yeah, not very much stuff, but that's okay. I mean,
no, just a couple things. But we're really trying to work hard to beef that up. You know,
Yeah,
those are like baby
new.
numbers.
We're
Right.
new.
We're new. Christopher drives a hard shit, but I'm trying.
Yeah. Jason Spears, Christopher Dean, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. This has been a blast.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And I have a feeling we could just one of these days we're just going to bring you on here. We're going to have like one of those 3-hour conversations.
Hey, I'm down for it.
Yeah,
I'm down.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Guys, go check out the podcast Operation Red Pill. Don't forget to get registered for Strangeland Conference. It's going to be here before you know it, like 45 days. Hey, God bless you guys, and we will see you next time. All right, bye. Hey, folks, I just met the witches and Satanists, and they're going to allow me to do an interview with him. So let's see what happens.